Have you ever dropped a hint thinking that the other person would get it, but they were clueless? When my husband and I were newly married, I occasionally needed his help, but I couldn't bring myself to ask directly. Instead, I would drop hints because obviously he should know what I needed and therefore come and help me, right? Well, you can probably guess what happened. Those hints sailed right over his head, out the window, and into the deep blue yonder, never to be seen again. The ironic thing was that my husband was more than willing to help. All I had to do was ask. But instead, I kept hinting away until my face turned blue, and meanwhile, he was happily oblivious. But whose problem was it? Was it my husband, who was blissfully unaware that I needed help? No, he was totally willing to help me. He just didn't know, because I didn't tell him. The problem wasn't his. It was mine. Managing a team can be like that. You see an employer volunteer doing something that frustrates you and you want them to change. So you drop some hints, because surely that will help. I've got news for you. It doesn't. Hinting at problems without directly addressing them is hopeful management. You hope the employee gets it. You hope they change. You hope your subtle signals somehow worm their way into their understanding. And meanwhile, the worker's happily off doing their own thing while your frustration grows. The frustration doesn't help you, your team, or your organization. Management by hinting doesn't go very far. So why do leaders avoid direct feedback? Often it's because tough conversations feel uncomfortable. So to avoid conflict, they try another approach. Vague hints or sweeping statements. And now we get into another problem. Blanket feedback. Blanket feedback is what happens when a leader avoids addressing an issue with one person responsible and instead makes a general statement or policy that impacts the whole team. For example, one worker's overspending their expense account, and instead of having a direct conversation with that one person, the manager decides everyone now has to submit receipts 3 different ways and get approvals from 3 different supervisors. Or one worker is consistently late to work, and the manager calls a meeting with the whole team and says, "Hey everyone, let's remember we're supposed to start on time every day." And the one team member who needs to hear this is spacing out and playing on their phone. And the other 39 team members are offended, thinking, "What? I'm always on time." This is feedback overkill. It's like using a hammer to remove a tiny splinter. You create a lot of collateral damage without fixing the real problem. And here's why blanket feedback often fails. It alienates your team. People who are already doing the right thing feel unfairly targeted. It doesn't address the root issue. The one person who needs to hear feedback most likely won't notice vague or indirect comments. It adds unnecessary complexity. Generating an entire policy because of a single person creates more work for everyone, including you, without solving the actual problem. By avoiding tough conversations, you're not sparing your team, you're silently growing frustration. So, what's the solution? Instead of a broad blanket approach, use a focused feedback filter to guide your conversation. This approach helps you to communicate clearly and effectively with the person who needs to hear it the most. It's a filter to drill down all the possible things you could say to be as focused as possible. So start with the who. Identify the specific person you need to address. Don't talk to the whole group or make vague statements. What? Focus on the behavior that needs to change. Avoid bringing up unrelated issues. Just stick to the point. How? Be clear about your expectations. What needs to happen for the behavior to improve? When? Set a timeline. Let them know when you follow up to check on progress. Leadership isn't about hoping for change, but about helping others see and achieve it. You move from hopeful management to helpful management when you address things directly, and this shift benefits everyone. The worker gets clarity. Your team member can't fix what they don't know is broken. Clear feedback is the key to growth. The team avoids unnecessary rules. No one feels punished for something they didn't do. You build trust. Honest, constructive conversations show you're a leader who values transparency and fairness. Now, hey, I get it. Speaking to someone directly can feel uncomfortable, but direct conversations are far more effective than hinting or blanketing. And here's the bonus. Your worker may be more willing to adapt or help them than you think if you actually ask, just like my husband was willing. So move from hopeful management, hinting and blanketing, to helpful management. Direct conversations build trust, solve problems, and make life easier for everyone involved.